In this century, great strides have been made toward the goal of subverting our republic into a democracy. The foremost tactic of the subverters is subversion of language. By calling America a democracy until people thoughtlessly accept and use the term, the totalitarians have obscured the real meaning of our principles of government. That is a summary of my report on a constitutional republic, not a democracy.
Welcome back to Notify America. We have multiple pressing stories to get to, stories that include the mysterious termination of one of CBS's best reporters, Deepens now, as sources from within CBS provide some stunning details on what transpired during her departure. We have the details. Also, an update on the nationwide cellular outage that many Americans experienced yesterday as AT&T comes out with their side of the story. And more information, more stories from around the world that are important. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing to continue receiving these daily updates. El Salvador's president tells America to abandon globalism and says dark forces are at work taking over your country. He said this at a CPAC event in Washington this week. And remember, this is the same guy who establishment Washington hates. He completely solved El Salvador's crime problem. He made Bitcoin legal tender a few years ago, which a lot of people were pissed off about. He's working also on a real clean and renewable energy project, geothermal energy, harnessed not from wind or solar, both things that do what? Benefit the Chinese economy, but instead, geothermal energy being harnessed directly from his country's volcanoes. Well, watch him speak at CPAC and tell Americans how to defeat the globalist agenda. Watch this.
They say globalism comes to die at CPAC. I'm here to tell you that in El Salvador, it's already dead. But if you want globalism to die here too, you must be willing to unapologetically fight against everything and everyone that stands for it. Fight for your freedoms. Fight for your rights. The next president of the United States must not only win an election, he must have the vision, the will, and the courage to do whatever it takes. And above all, he must be able to identify the underlying forces that will conspire against him. These dark forces are already taking over your country. You may not see it yet, but it's already happening.
In another story, yesterday morning around 4 a.m. Eastern Time, a nationwide cellular outage began, affecting multiple carriers, but most affected was AT&T. Customers around the country reported outages with no network found type errors appearing on their phones. This prompted the FBI and DHS to investigate. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, said that the outage was not caused by a cyber attack. They came out late yesterday and said that, confirmed it. The media is saying only AT&T was affected. But I personally know people who have Verizon and weren't able to use their phones, couldn't make or receive calls for 8 hours yesterday, which has never happened to them before. So I'm not sure why they keep saying this was only AT&T related. The site Down Detector shows thousands of outage reports from Verizon customers as well. Now, AT&T put out a statement saying the outage was caused by an incorrect process initiated during an update they performed while expanding their network yesterday morning, but that the problem has been fixed and full service has been restored. But again, why had so many people experienced these problems that didn't have AT&T? It's just very strange. In another story, Democrats and establishment Washington have began a major campaign for narrative control this week, all circled around covering for the president and his son Hunter, and bury this impeachment inquiry once and for all, or at least develop a viable counter-argument. Here's a taste of how, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this new narrative has formed on corporate media, or really an old narrative reincarnated: Trump-Russia collusion. It's back, folks, something that's been thoroughly debunked. So what's happening here? Watch this. And remember, these clips aren't from 2016. These are all new clips from this week. Watch this.
Every election, it seems, the Republicans fall in favor with the Russians.
They're willing to carry any water for Trump, and I'm not sure where this kinds of now fetish for Russia ever became as well.
It seems like a lot of the domestic enemies are right here serving in the House with us.
So what the hell is going on? Weren't we past all of this Russia nonsense? It's all been disproven. With the Mueller report, spent millions and millions of dollars looking into this, debunking it all. I don't know, it feels like someone was getting too close to the truth this week. Maybe Congress, I don't know. Think about what happened though. The FBI arrested their CI this week, their confidential informant, an informant, by the way, who worked for them for 10 years and was trusted. Arrested him a week before he was about to spill the beans in sworn testimony in front of Congress, and was arrested by the same prosecutor who came up with the sweetheart plea deal for Hunter Biden a few months ago. If you remember that, where he would receive immunity from all future crimes. So that same prosecutor swoops in again to rescue the Bidens. It's just very odd. And that arrest was the hook the media needed and Democrats really needed for all the coverage that we just watched. So that's like the backstory from this week. But something else that happened that's gotten very little attention is the termination of Catherine Herridge, one of the only real reporters left in corporate media, journalists in the corporate media machine who follow stories regardless where they lead. Well, she was mysteriously let go this week as she reportedly was leaked documents showing evidence of Biden family corruption. Now, we covered the Catherine Herridge story a few days ago when it first broke after she was fired. The reason CBS gave was she was caught up in a larger slew of layoffs. They said it had nothing to do with her reporting, even though she was the only reporter fired, and she's the best reporter they have. Well, yesterday we learned that a lot more happened with this. After CBS fired Catherine Herridge, who again was in the middle of investigating Hunter Biden's laptop, CBS seized her belongings. The network reportedly took her files, her computers, and most concerning, all the information on her privileged sources, the people who leaked this information to her. Now, insiders are coming forward at CBS who witnessed all of this, and they say they were so taken aback that they had to come out and speak about it, saying for all the years they worked at CBS, they never saw anything like this. One of the people said in all past departures, journalists took all their files and office contents with them. They would just box everything up from cups to Post-its for departing reporters, and that source said the holding of the material was so outrageous and clearly is endangering confidential sources. But again, nothing to see here, folks. This entire Biden family corruption scheme or activity or whatever is all just Russian disinformation.
WikiLeaks, Carter Page, and all of that rolled into one. You know, for people who maybe just have lived under a rock for the last 8 years, I'll say this, as I've said it before, for Russia, the Cold War never ended. United States is Vladimir Putin's main enemy. He's desperate, and this makes him incredibly dangerous. So why wouldn't he try to interfere with the election? Why wouldn't he try to undermine Joe Biden? It just, just makes total sense with everything we've seen the last 8 years.
Is just one more aspect of the whole Russian misinformation campaign that so distorted our electoral processes from 2016 and going forward. The allegations seem to be the only evidence we have. What they're calling a prong of the investigation looks to be the entire foundation, and that entire foundation now may have been chopped away.
Those 51 former intelligence officials, they paid a steep price for signing that letter. The Republicans said this was election interference. This was a bogus attempt to suppress a legitimate story. And as it turns out, they were right. They've been proven correct in the sense that we now know that Russian intelligence, at least according to the statements of this informant, bolstered somewhat by this indictment, were feeding him information, false information.
So again, out of nowhere this week, we've been fed this constant stream and diet of Russian scaremongering. Started with who? With Hillary Clinton last week in Germany. Corporate media is now nonstop using the FBI informant who was just arrested as a hook for all this, saying there's nothing to see here. All of it was just made up, which is ridiculous. The informant was just additional corroboration for everything that we already know about the Biden situation, which there's boatloads that have nothing to do with the CI. Just to name a few from memory, offhand, how about actual eyewitness testimony from Hunter's business partner, Tony Bobulinski, his laptops, visitor logs from the White House, huge checks that we now have copies of, diamonds, multiple dime-sized diamonds gifted to Hunter from the Chinese, wire transfers from foreign-based companies, and a ton of other things that I just don't recall at the moment. So this whole thing is not just about this one CI. They're just using this, folks. Don't fall for it. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.